Absolutely.
Delayed the time.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. Hey, thank you for allowing me to be here. Again, my name is Blake Chapman, State Insurance USA, local independent insurance agency. But yeah, we've got an office in Fort Myers, one in Estero. And believe it or not, right before Hurricane Ian, we opened an office on August 30th on Fort Myers Beach. So you can imagine, right, how that was. We had a grand opening out there. And so I'm sure my story is kind of similar to several. From the the dreams and the things that we were wanting to accomplish, or devastation and those things. But yeah, that was something we were calling our coastal division, things of that nature. So well, we got to learn a lot, right? We did get to learn a lot, things of that nature. But there's 5 topics that I kind of wanted to go over. This was a presentation I was doing last year. A lot of the same stuff, kind of what's wrong with in the industry. There's still some of the struggles. The insurance industry, they're getting a little bit better, but it's going to take some time. But a lot of these things still apply. But the 5 things that I want to go over is, what does the claims process look like, and how can we be better prepared? Or whatnot. Whether it's a hurricane, it's a windstorm, if it's a flooding event, or if it's just an everyday claim that we see with a pipe breaking in the home, or a fire, there is some things that you can do to be better prepared for that, or better prepare your customers. So I wanted to hit on a couple of those. I would say, our office has seen thousands of claims because of Ian, and just our office alone has seen well over $100 million in claims paid out. So, and those are flood claims, so our experience is definitely there. We're not physically paying those claims, right? I'm just the insurance agent, but we are in the middle of the disaster with the customers and helping them navigate through that. One of the other things is, what's kind of going on with, what's the major reason for the increases in the insurance industry? Those have been there for quite some time, and we'll hit a couple of those. How can we get the best rates on insurance right now? What are some things with just some of the recent legislation, or some things within how homes have been updated that could be helping? Limited capacity, limited markets, but we'll touch on that a little bit. And what do I do? This is a really common question. What do I do if I get a cancellation? There's a lot of short-term cancellations going out. We see a lot of carriers that are sending in basically approvals to the Office of Insurance Regulation for being able to non-renew policies. And that's really confusing. So I'm going to give you a couple things there that you can kind of help your customers, or maybe if you're in that situation, if you get a non-renewal or you get a cancellation, where to go from there. And some of the recent flood insurance changes that happened in 2021, I'm going to give some help on how you can navigate through those things for sure. But yeah, grab this for sure. And my first slide, I believe it was actually, this was Hurricane Charlie, and then that was Hurricane Irma, I believe. So I don't have an updated slide for Ian yet, but we'll definitely get one of those. But Ian was definitely a large flood event in our coastal areas, which you really know, or what have you. But anyways, while we're here today, I just want to give you a couple nuggets of information on how you can be better prepared for the claims process, and what does that look like, and something that you can take to your customers and maybe help you down the road. So one of the number one things that I saw is, a lot of agencies, local agencies and whatnot, maybe we're without power, without internet. And so if you're trying to reach your local agency, people weren't prepared on what numbers to call, who do I call if I have roof damage, and all those things. So the best thing to do is to do that now. Prepare. Who are you going to call in the event of a disaster? Now it's crazy, right? At that time, everybody has damage. But I would go ahead and research some of those roofers or restoration companies. Talk with your agent on those things. A lot of the carriers do have repair networks. Do they have that available to you as a customer? And what does that look like? What does that process look like? I would do that due diligence now, especially going in. Can you believe it? It's already February 3rd, and we're going into June 1st here really soon, right? Hurricane season again. But do those things now. And that would be the best thing that I would tell customers as well, is like, what are you going to do if something happens to your dishwasher and it overflows into the house, or it happens to your AC unit and it overflows in the house? And if they know who they're going to contact, what restoration company, or if their carrier has a network, many do. They have a preferred vendor network. Reach out on those things. Next thing to do. So the customer does have a duty at the time of the loss. And what do they have to do? I mean, they need to protect the property from further damage and basically start doing any temporary repairs until they can get the claims adjuster out there or whatnot. I would say we had a lot of customers who are like, I'm waiting on the insurance company and all these things, and they're on their 5th adjuster. And so it could be really, really helpful if you had somebody that could come out, do the temporary repairs, and evaluate your situation and just do the temporary stuff that's needed. We'll better prepare the customers for the time of the claim. Detail, document everything would be the best thing to do. Take pictures. Unfortunately, there's a struggle right now going on with like, hey, they weren't able to verify my contents on my flood policy, and now they're giving me a hard time of wanting to pay that. So detail everything. Take pictures of everything. Take videos of everything. Those are all the things that I would say that are helpful in the early days, for sure. Then the next thing that I would say is extremely helpful is to start to get those estimates. A lot of times the insureds are waiting on the carrier to come out and do their adjusting report and do their estimates. That is their duty. They come out and survey the loss, but a lot of them after Hurricane Ian and any claim, they might miss a couple things because they're there quickly. And so it's best to get those estimates from contractors they can trust and go from there for sure. So the customer does have that duty to prevent further loss, and also, the best thing to do is to get those estimates. Here's the other thing. Most of the time, it's very, the phone lines are bogged at the time of a catastrophe like that, and there's long hold times. Most carriers have a way to file your claim online. So that would be one of the other things that I would suggest. Find out if that's available with your home insurance company, your flood insurance company, or your customer. Give them that. You might be able to file this online and not have to be on hold for hours on end, especially after a catastrophe. That increase, I would say about 27%, 30% from what I hear of the claims are filed online. You can do them from a mobile app these days, right? We love these mini computers in our pockets, or what have you. But that will help speed up the claims process. At the time of catastrophe, we have several adjusters coming in from all parts of the country to help with those things. But I would advise customers to get their estimates, get those uploaded to the portals, and that has always helped speed up the process for sure. If you're having any other trouble, sometimes your agent can help with the communication, so make sure you have a good agency that's going to be able to help in the event you're not hearing back from the company or your adjuster switch, that can at least get the communication going again. So, did anybody have a Hurricane Ian claim? Yeah, absolutely. Was it roof damage? Was it flood damage? What was your new roof? Okay. Anybody have any flood damage? Flood damage? New roof? Flood damage? Yeah, absolutely. Tons of claims filed for sure. Definitely. But hopefully a couple of those, just some advice on filing a claim, use those. Educate your customers too on that. And I think it would really serve them well if they did a little due diligence on who you're going to call from a roofing perspective. Try to get on their preferred, list that, hey, we're going to check in with you, prior to, they're going to be going out everywhere and anything. Are you going to be able to get me on your list? Check those things prior to having the storm happen. But sorry to hear about the roof, but it sounds like it's nice and pretty now, or whatnot.
Oh, no, not yet.
Working on it. Tile, okay.
7 months.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Are you going to stay with tile, or are you going?
I am, but I'm
Okay.
doing flat, not the.
Okay, not the curved tile.
What's the reason why a desk adjuster is switched in the middle of the transaction?
This is going to be the best. That's more on the carrier level, but why the desk adjuster would transfer That's kind of what I was. Usually the field adjusters will change a little bit, but the desk might be just because they have an outside party and now they're bringing it inside to handle it. So that's probably the best answer. Some of our large home companies down in this area were using large national adjusting firms at first, and that's why I was switching several times. Now they're most of that's coming back in-house, which is kind of a good thing. I was talking to a couple of carriers that are going to try to have some on-site adjusters and adjusting managers that can make things happen faster. And they're looking for some places in the community to be able to do that. So it should get faster. From the data that, if you go to like the Office of Insurance Regulation, they have to record all this data. I'm hearing that there's reports where 80% of the claims are closed. Yeah, we're working on that 10%. It's going to take some time. It's probably for sure. But that would be my only, yeah. And things should get faster now that they get this massive influx of claims and they're all different severities. They're trying to triage the ones and get to the ones that have the largest damage fastest for sure. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen again and it gets better from here on out for sure. The other big thing that we've got going on in the industry, anything else on the claims process or anything that was confusing in your claim that I could clarify maybe or anything, let me know. Yeah, absolutely.
My lanai was revoked. The lanai
Okay.
enclosure.
Yeah.
I see in the policy that it says attached, I have this much coverage. But then later I found out that there is a small print that says that there is an exception on that one.
Yeah.
So I thought it was covered,
Yeah.
and I found out that I wasn't, so that's
Yeah.
very disappointing.
100%. Yeah, there's definitely, if it has anything to do with, if it's like aluminum or anything of that nature, there's usually an exclusion on anything for hurricane loss. And so that's the crazy part about it. Yeah, it is in those policies. All of them are different. Every carrier is different on how it's factored too. If it's an aluminum screen enclosure, but yeah, sorry to hear about that for sure. And absolutely, see if it's available. I mean, sometimes it's not available. I'll give you Citizens where we've got over 1.4 million, I think policies are getting close to that. They don't offer it, so it's not even something that's going to be offered. And a lot of consumers had to move to Citizens prior to Ian, and their book agents and stuff weren't covered because Citizens, which is our state-run, state-backed insurance company, doesn't offer that. But there might be one that is, might be a whole lot more. And then there's ways that it's factored. So I would get with a good advisor and say, hey, what about this? And play those situations out or whatnot, or even advise your customers, like ask about the pool cage, or whatnot. Agent needs to be doing that. They need to be doing that 100%, but it is something to ask about, absolutely. How's my personal property factored? Do I have personal property? There's a lot, because of all the flood changes that were happening, that a lot of people opted not to carry flood contents coverage, and it was a financial loss in that situation, for sure. But hey, great question. Yes?
I have kind of a general question, I don't know, but who determines or how do they determine after the storm if it's a wind event or a flood event or, I mean, obviously the rising waters were caused from the wind.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it was a flood event, but
Yes.
there was a lot of wind damage in addition.
Yeah, who determines that? I mean, of course, it's the carrier that has to give a coverage determination and determine what caused the loss. It goes even further than there's engineers. Engineers actually determine what was caused by what, and then they disagree. And so that's why, and then, hey, well, they paid that, we're not gonna pay that too. And so, but engineers are gonna want to be the ones that do that. Structural engineers are gonna look at what happened, and that's their field of expertise, and the carriers are gonna pay for that on their end. But you got a home carrier, and you got the national flood, or you got a private flood carrier, so there could very well be multiple engineers involved and not agreeing on things. And yeah, it can be very, very challenging. But ultimately, they're going to use those reports. Who makes that determination? It is the adjuster based on whatever he gets from the engineer's report.
I mean, that happened really quick. I mean, obviously, within days of the storm, we're finding out that it was a
Yeah.
flood event and.
Yeah. Honestly, those engineering reports take a long time. I would say now we're getting through it. The first couple of months, I know, I mean, it takes them probably 30 days to get them back and then review them, or what have you. So yeah, that made it a extremely, I think, a painful process for many insurers or that were out on the barrier islands and things of that nature, for sure. Yes.
I have a question too.
Yes.
When they do the exact rates for the claim report,
Yes.
why aren't they all the same when we're in the same area? Like, why wouldn't they have the same contents covered and my price would be the same as my neighbor's price? Or, like, why do they all differentiate between, like, what they're covering under the roof or what they're covering on, you know, like, why wouldn't the materials be the same? If it's the same roof and whatever, like, why wouldn't they have the same coverage?
You know, that's
Why
a
they
great
all-
question. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think, you know, those are all based off of whatever the industry data is, I think, at the time, right, or whatnot. So it should be relatively, but then they've got adjustments that they can make in there based on the age of the home. And those factors, I think, is what we're going at. You know, but yeah, they should be relatively the same. Now, again, what the carrier estimates is just based off them putting it into their software as well, their field adjusting report. That's why those estimates that I hit on, get additional estimates, because that's just their estimate. That's their duty to go out and do that estimate, but then I would get, what is the real dollars to replace that today? The other challenge will be there, some policies might have a limited amount of coverage. Well, what do you mean by that, Blake? Well, they might not cover it at replacement cost, they cover it at actual cash value. So the 20-year-old roof that only had a useful life of 10 years left, that's what they'll factor it at. And so, now, some policies are first paid that way at the actual cash value, and then you can recoverable depreciation. Yes, but yeah, I think you're going to see that variation a little bit different. I'm dealing on a water claim right now, and you know, the reports, you know, from the restoration company, you know, sometimes it can be challenging, or, you know, to repair and to remediate was like $15,000, and the carrier had $6,500, and the field adjuster was only there for 20 minutes. So they need to look at those reports in detail, or those estimates is what I'm getting at, the true estimates, and then compare them. You know, and yeah, we've had to multiple times, screen failure is one when there is coverage. You know, they might factor it to be $7,800. Well, maybe like 24 months ago, but not today, right? So, yeah, the real today estimates on repair will make all the difference in the world. And so, yeah, they should be relatively similar if the data is put in the same, I don't think, but
I guess
not
there's
matching.
general data that everyone has, since everyone just kind of uses their own, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, it should be relatively close, but I would get real estimates and then send those to your adjuster and say, hey, this is what it's really going to cost to repair, and we need to make those changes. And, you know, there might be something that they'll say, hey, that our policy doesn't cover that or whatever. Typically it is, it just needs to be adjusted again. You know, and the other thing is, I think everybody's always kind of worried. And I had somebody hit me on the interstate just recently, and the carrier sent out a payment right away. I'm like, it's more than $1,800. You get hit at 75 miles an hour. You know, I mean, like, and thank you, but you know, I'm dealing with it on my own. And you know, there's always, if they claims can be closed and open. That's not a problem at all. If there's additional information that shows that it's going to be higher, right? So they send out that. There's always going to be a supplemental payment for the recoverable or anything of that nature, for sure. But yeah, it should be close, or it should cover exactly whatever the policy states and whatever it costs to repair. So, but you got a wide range of, this roofer is 120 and this one's 35. What is the difference there? And so that's what the carriers are kind of seeing sometimes. But the exact thing, it's just an estimate. Yes.
It may be too soon now to see what's going to happen, but I have a question. With a lot of the ground level homes
Yes.
that had major flood damage, those owners took the flood money because they had no mortgages.
Yes.
And gutted it, and they sell it as a shell. What are your thoughts about future buyers being able to get flood insurance on that property since that claim was made?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, they can get insurance, so we have had that question a lot. You can't get insurance as a new buyer, everything of that
Okay.
nature. How's that going to affect the flood rates? It does have a claim, so through the National Flood Insurance, now that they switched, they know all that stuff, they're getting all that data. So the impact right away, it will be faster than it ever has been, I'll tell you that much, but I can't exactly answer that. But they can't get flood insurance coverage, that would be a
Okay.
problem.
And in a lot of the instances, like within the last year, some of these buyers were able to, the sellers, the buyers assumed the flood policy in place.
Okay.
So it saved them a lot of money.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything yet on renewals? Do they then jack it up on a renewal, or does that sort of stay the same?
I should say, I mean, if they assume over the flood policy, whatever they, yeah, it should stay the same. There's not gonna be anything that would change on that. You know, other than whatever the increase could be annually.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so it is possible, like, come the following year.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
It's
I mean, I'll
not,
give you a quick example down in the difference in flood rates. The current customer has a flood policy, they're paying like $688. Throw that number out to you, and you can see on these flood policies where they're going. You just gotta look into the details, and it says an annual cap discount on there, and that's the national flood, but that was going to like $4,500, or that's where it would be if the current owner didn't have flood insurance. And it's a cash buyer, that's where they would start if they were to purchase through the National Flood Insurance Program. Good thing to do, but you also have private carriers you can look at. So yeah, but you can, I don't see any problem with placing flood insurance back on that home if it can be repaired and there's not any like 50% rule and having to be redone, rebuilt. But yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Yes.
And what about the FEMA federal flood, that if
Yes.
something got paid out by FEMA, and then that there's 3 years of automatic flood insurance that stays with the property, correct?
So the flood claims, yeah, I mean, they'll run that, yeah. The problem is whenever you get more than one, it ever becomes a repetitive loss, and some might have had it in Irma, now they had it in Ian, and so that's flagged now within the last 10 years, that's a repetitive loss property. We haven't had to really deal with that much in Florida, so, but that is very common along the Mississippi River, where those were flooding every couple of years, so. More data comes out on that, I'll let you know, but yes, the second one is really where they're gonna start to trigger that, but it will change the way, there was 2 recent map changes with the National Flood Insurance. Everybody thinks they're in, usually, but that had nothing to do with it. It had everything to do with a lot of the data that happened 3 or 4 years ago, and it just got put out there, so. But yeah, one's not gonna be an issue, it's gonna be the second one, and then flood insurance can be extremely expensive because it's a repetitive loss property.
Especially if it's not built.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, so that's where a lot of coastal areas are like, hey, we have a substantial flood loss, you know, and they're really, yeah, I don't have to, I could rebuild, but no, I also want to maybe elevate this so that you know it's doable, and that will change the whole landscape on the flood insurance side. If they do that. Yes.
You mentioned a cash buyer for property, just like she mentioned.
Yes.
What about someone who's getting a loan? Are they able to get insurance,
Yeah,
flood, or hazard?
Yeah, 100% they can. I was mentioning that just because of the prior owner didn't carry a flood policy. But if the prior owner, yeah, regardless, yeah, cash or whatever. But sometimes the prior owner doesn't carry a flood policy, and they'll start at that new 2.0 rate is what I was alluding to. So, yes.
I'm working with a buyer right now for the
Yes.
Her budget's not very high, but with the insurance, just out of curiosity, like some of the houses that we're looking at have some hurricane damage, like some missing shingles. The sellers aren't willing to replace them because they can't get someone out to replace the missing shingles right now, or they don't want to replace the roof, but they're willing to negotiate that. Is that going to hurt her getting insurance going into that house? Like, is that going to ding her?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer is yes. I would say every situation can be a little bit different.
But I'm saying for like loan purposes, like she's FHA, will that like affect her?
Oh, I don't know. That's a mortgage world term. But from an insurance perspective, yeah, I mean, companies are very picky on, is there any existing damage from Ian? But, you know, things are getting a little bit better, and sometimes if it's something relatively small, you might just talk with the agent, they can talk with underwriting, you know, or if there's a roof that's being, going to be done in the next 60 days, sometimes there's an option for that. But yeah, if it's anything substantial, most say no, unfortunately, for
I'm
sure.
talking about like age too, like just say the house is, the age of the roof is 15 years, is going to be an issue like
Yeah,
for
yeah.
insurance still?
Be a challenge, yeah, it still is extremely challenging, for sure. Actually, roof age, You know, a lot of older roofs and stuff are moving to like citizens of the company, and they've come out and making sure, hey, is everything have a roof permit? And that's just in the last few years, so. Yeah, it's still super challenging underwriting wise, you know, whatnot, absolutely. Wish I had more hope, though maybe in the future, for sure. The legislation that happened in December is definitely something that's gonna help, with those things, so, but, it's gonna take some time, absolutely. You got a question?
I do.
Okay.
Roughly, how many carriers do we have writing private?
Private
insurance
flood, private
insurance?
home, or just private business?
Private flood.
There's probably a handful, but a majority of them, if they're coastal, they're getting off the coastal stuff and looking at setbacks. And one of the, it was an admitted flood carrier, Tip Tap, I don't know if you've heard that name, Homeowner's Choice Tip Tap or whatever, and they're getting off all theirs. So they're not renting the whole thing, just, and the reason why is the reinsurance costs are so high, you know, and whatnot. But yeah, so there's probably about a handful. Coastal wise, if there's a flood claim, I don't see a private flood carrier wanting to take that. Case by case basis, but definitely will always be an option to the national flood insurance for sure. Off the coast, yes, there's more private flood options. There's Lloyd's of London, Neptune's another one. They're national, so they're outright.
Okay, I have a question specifically about, I have a buyer who's looking, he prefers Sanibel, but I'm like, I don't know if you're gonna find anybody to write anything there.
Very challenging. Existing damage is the problem, really, you know.
Yeah.
We've got several customers out there that were trying to roll. They were in the middle of remodeling the home, and so it's got a set of challenges because of the existing damage piece. But yeah, if everything is and then the high value side too. So, you know, Citizens writes a lot of that wind out there, but it only goes up to 700,000. So, you know, that's a challenge there too. But yeah, if there's not any damage, things look good, it wouldn't be a problem. There would be an option for them. Absolutely. But yeah, any other claim questions? I'll move on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
real quick. Can you explain assignability in some of these insurance claims and moving on to the next
Okay.
year or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Check with the carrier, see if they allow it. For some of the policies do have a limitation on where they can assign things. I would say that's probably the best thing to do, and that's probably important, right? You know, and then, yeah, typically, I believe it's the real estate attorneys that can draft up something about signing that stuff over. But yeah, check on the limitations in the policy first, or whatnot. But yeah, it can be done. I just had a client that had a 2016 home. I mean, you'd be like, I needed a new roof. Really? Wow. But they are getting a new roof, and they have signed over the proceeds from this. I think every situation is different. I would just check on the real estate.
It's a little more specific. I have a
Yeah.
client that's looking to list their house, but they wanted to get all their claims done, and they have. Everything's pretty much going to be done in a couple of weeks, and they ended up going with the public adjuster thinking they were going to get some more money. And now she said, what if we have that claim, but we're not doing anything with that? You know, it's going to go away because everything's paid out of pocket. They have receipts for everything they paid for. They're just looking to get reimbursed for the money they took out of pocket.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's going to go anywhere. Is that going to affect the?
It can. It can challenge them. I mean, the reason I'm saying that is because they still have an open claim and they're trying to purchase another property.
Or they
Now
can
that
sell the property with
those claims,
that they can show.
if all the damages are repaired, and that can be shown, there's usually that the new buyer should have. But most some carriers are like, there's no claim on the property for a month. So yeah, I would say close the claim or whatnot, and you can always open it up later if you want to. But typically that won't affect, if all the damages are repaired, it won't affect the new buyer. So companies don't allow it, so I can do it. But yeah, we'll move on for sure. What's driving up the rates? I mean, that's probably the big thing, for sure. The main attorney fees, legal fees were massive. You know, on my old PowerPoint or whatnot, I think there was like $3 billion in litigation cost alone, you know, or whatnot. A lot of that changed. We had 3-time multiplier on those, and so it was very advantageous on the legal side to draw things out a long period of time over even minor claims. And so That was probably one of the biggest drivers of rates increasing in the past. One of the big things now is we've had 5 years of constant storms, right? You go back from Irma, Michael, Ian, and so a few others I'm missing, trying to blank on, but that's kind of what I'm hearing from the.
Replaced, this was replaced, this was, my HVAC's gonna be new, my roof's gonna be new, my impact windows are gonna be new, my walls are gonna be new.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if
My
the whole,
plumbing, my electric, all of it's being
Yeah.
done.
you don't need it if you're gonna keep saving your current company, but if the home's over 20 years old and say you're looking for insurance, most carriers are requiring it after 20 years these days. And yes, to answer your question, just like I said, the wind mitigation communicates to them the age of the roof, the strapping, the nailing, the impact windows. The 4-point is how they use to communicate that. So I wish there was another way of like, hey, here's all my receipts for everything. But the 4-point actually
My
communicates.
insurance coverage,
Yeah, I mean,
my 10 pages of what they're doing,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you could try. Underwriting will maybe approve it, maybe not. You know, I mean, we've used various things for
Well,
sure.
on Fort Myers Beach, you're not gonna get by without impact windows, without the extra strapping for your roof,
Yeah,
without new electric. I mean, they're so
yeah, no,
tight on their 50%
100%.
rule and their permitting,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, the 4-point, just an eligibility thing for sure. And yeah, it's usually a nominal cost, not too crazy. Most will do it with the updated wind mitigation. So yeah, I would advise that if you're out there looking or a new buyer, 20 years and newer, or excuse me, 20 years and older on the wind mitigation, and then on the 4-point, 20 years and older on the 4-point, and on the wind mitigation, if they haven't updated the roof, I'd go ahead and get one. You know, in the past, we used to tell you 2002 and newer, you don't need one. That's not true anymore. 2002 was a long, long time ago, and you need a wind mitigation if you've updated the roof, because it can definitely help. Or again, any other updates to, yes?
The new construction, let's say they built the home before Hurricane Ian,
Yes.
and they're actually repairing the whole roof, putting a whole new roof. Is it required to have a 4-point and
No.
wind mitigation?
Yeah, no, it's not required. I mean, there might be the existing damage issue, but no, it's not. I mean, anything that's usually 3 years and newer, there's not any inspections
But
needed.
does it claim?
Now, the open claim is going to be a problem, yeah. Any type of open claim or existing damage is a problem, for sure. Now, again, every company can be a little different. There's some that might give, like Citizens will give you 60 days to get the new roof on. If you can show the roof contract, paid receipt. And so there's other carriers that might do that soon. We had a lot that would do it after Irma, but again, it's not doing that.
Will the insurance go up for them in this case? For new construction?
Probably not. I mean, it would be nominal. There's almost every carrier's out there wanting to write new construction because of the new codes and stuff. You might lose a claim, if it's the current owner, you might lose a claims-free discount, you know, down the road, but it will be nominal in my opinion.
About new construction.
Yes.
Usually the house has an elevation certificate saying that it's 7 or 8 feet,
Yes.
right? There is any discount if the house is built in more than 7 or 8, let's say 10 or 11?
Yeah, there is. It used to be a lot more. So that was the major, there's 2 factors, right? Where's the home located and what's the elevation based on what they require. And if you were built a lot higher, it would be a substantial credit. Now there's 8 things that factor in. And one of them, has there been any claims around the area? What's the replacement cost on the home? And what I'm getting at is the elevation is just one of those 8 where it used to be one of the primary things. And so it can still help, it's not required in one of them. So if that makes sense, I'd still get it on a new one, and I'd still submit it because it could probably save a little bit, but it used to be a drastic difference. If you were 6 inches higher or a foot higher, it could cut the rate in half. Those days, unfortunately, are gone. If you're in a high-risk flood zone, those are going to help, but you're still going to be paying. What the National Flood Insurance calls it is a full risk rate for based on location. So that makes sense. Right? Yeah. I'll give you an example. There's a lot of those elevated homes right on Fort Myers Beach, And they weren't paying a lot for flood insurance, but they got surely knocked over, right, and they're gone. And so the reason I say they weren't, because the whole area underneath was supposed to be, water could pass through and everything of that nature. Well, that's all changed. Now, where is it located? What was the age and those factors, more than the elevation certificate itself. So hopefully that helps a little bit, yeah.
Just a quick question. I heard that roof age is changing now. Is that true? It used to be like 19 years and then quick you would get insurance. Now I hear it's going down to 10.
Yeah, I mean, is it changing? It just depends on the company. I mean, there's a carrier out there right now that, you know, some are only writing 10 years and older on a tile roof, some are writing 25, but the rates can be drastically different, right? So, yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's probably an option. You know, Citizens, again, they'll write up to 700,000, and they'll write a 40-year-old tile roof, you know, or whatnot. So, it just depends, you know, rate-wise. But yeah, if it's relatively newer, it's gonna be better, you know, open you up to more options for sure. Yes?
Tile versus metal roofs.
You know, there's never been a major, like credit advantage one way or the other. I don't know, I've seen a lot of people going with the metal recently.
Because you can get it.
Yeah, you can get it,
And the
and,
metal looks like tile.
yeah, and it'll last forever, is what I'm seeing, you know, and, it is interesting, you know, tile used to be that way, but I think with Florida, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be holding on to the levels. And then all I can't match it, and it doesn't meet code, and, you know, I don't know, you know, we'll let you figure out if those things are true or whatnot, and then sometimes they are. But yeah, that's why for metal is like, it's fastened right there, solid.
Insurability.
Yeah.
Too. I mean, is there a big difference?
Not yet, maybe in the future, for sure. Other than eligibility, you know, that's where they used to allow 40, 50 years old on tile. Well, now you got some here that are 10 and newer now. We're not taking a chance of the matching tile and everything else. So eligibility is probably, you know, that's really going to be the strain. And maybe there'll be a credit for, once they look at the data, that's where all the wind mitigation stuff came from, right? After Charlie and whatnot, and actually Andrew. So I think they might even look at that. Metal roof should get a credit for sure. But any other? Yeah.
Is there, excuse me, is there an advantage between taking Citizens as opposed to an A-rated insurance company?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. Rate-wise, I mean, you need to be within 20% so of the private market, and so you shouldn't be eligible if you're not within. It's not 20% less. What's the advantage? It's usually just premium-wise, you know. Coverage can be pretty good. Yeah, I mean, no, Citizens. You know, I'll tell you from the agency side. In the past, it was like, I don't want to deal with it. They were great. They did a great job, you know, and so I think you can thank probably some of our government officials on that. They took care of customers in a big way. So the private market in some arenas, but yeah, now their rates are drastically changing and their eligibility is changing, and so you might not be eligible for them anymore, or required for a flood. So all that's starting to happen in April, so yes.
Well, you mentioned too, with the Citizens doesn't cover any of the lanai.
Yeah, it did cover the lanai.
What about
So
solar? Is that gonna be a big issue now? Does that have to be
yeah,
a big
it
thing?
is.
People getting their solar ripped off, is that gonna be an issue to have solar on the roof?
It is. Major issue. Some carriers do, they take it, it's fine, it's covered under the dwelling coverage. Then they've got the liability side that a lot of carriers are leery on too, if they're selling back, doing the rebating or whatever to the power company. So it's been a major challenge in the industry, but there is carriers out there that will write the whole thing, take the liabilities fine, and they'll cover the solar panels. You just got to search that out a little bit though and see.
Well, Citizen though, it's Citizen's not gonna.
They won't. They'll take it, but they don't cover the solar panels. So yeah, absolutely.
Same with dish satellites, if there's a dish up there and it hurts the roof, it's not gonna.
Citizens policies are very limited on anything other than the dwelling, or anything open to wind, like a pool cage or other structures and stuff can be really, really challenging. No, I would say I would go with a private carrier to answer your question. I did over Citizens 100%. Sometimes it's the right place to start, and then there'll be a takeout company that will take add out of citizens, and just based on the eligibility, nobody else will take it because it's an 18-year-old roof, and that's a good place to start. And then they're moving into Bird or another A-rated company, Florida Peninsula or whoever. So yeah, it's a nice place to start. Any other quick ones? Sorry. Last couple of things. There's probably a lot of consumers that are getting non-renewals, cancellations happening. Like I said, one of the carriers that's canceling or non-renewing all their flood policies is in May. When you get that, just contact the agent and have them evaluate the options. I would go ahead and say, if they're getting a non-renewal or they're getting a cancellation, go ahead and update those wind mitigation and 4-point inspections forms, and so that you can see what's available to them on the market. It's been crazy for the last year from a cancellation and a non-renewal standpoint. And they're looking at those things, where they're at in the area based on the age of the roof. But getting those inspections updated and navigating that process early is probably the best thing to do. And don't ever take it personal, I guess, right? It's just a lot of times it has everything to do with the capacity in an area or whatnot. But yeah, just reach out to an agent that you can trust. I would say an independent insurance agent that has multiple options and can move to that, move you to another company, and especially even on the flood stuff as well. How to navigate the flood insurance changes was one of the last topics that I had. If there's a current flood policy in place through National Flood Insurance, you can do one of two things, right? You should be able to transfer over those flood discounts via just transferring the flood policy, or by getting the carrier name and the policy number to the new agent, they should be able to apply those to another National Flood Insurance policy. And then the other thing is evaluate those if there isn't a flood policy in place and it isn't a flood zone. I got a great tool that I use right on FEMA's site just to look at flood zones and things of that nature. I think you guys have a great tool too, the Realtor Association too. You can see the overlay of the flood maps. But that's a big deal. Sometimes the flood insurance difference can be, there's some areas out in the Cape that went from $800 or $900 a year to $8,000 just because they're right on the edge of the Cape or whatnot, where they've had 2 losses or things of that nature. But the prior flood policy matters for sure. The other thing is, there was a lot of people that opted in the past to not carry contents on the flood insurance, and it was very costly. It was a very costly mistake, a lot of financial loss, and that's probably the biggest thing as a risk advisor you hate to see, because the financial loss is devastating at that time. Yeah, it was extremely expensive to carry that coverage, but some of these areas there was 8 to 10 feet or more of water. Make sure they know what they're being covered for, and those are great questions to ask. Hey, deal with somebody that you like to trust, but also, what other things what's going to happen in the event I have floodwater coming? Are my contents covered? How are they going to be covered? Going to be at replacement cost, or going to be at actual cash value? And I think if you ask those questions early, it would be great. Flood elevation certificates still go. It can be helpful. They're not required now, but it can still be helpful. And I would always get them and evaluate. It's not going to hurt. It can only help or whatnot. The other thing to think about too is the maximum coverage amounts for the National Flood Insurance was $250,000 and $100,000 in contents, and that wasn't enough for several that had to rebuild. Or the damages that Ian brought in from floodwaters. You can purchase excess flood insurance, typically as an option. It's going to be a little bit more challenging in some of the coastal areas, but something to look at, especially if it's a high-value home. What would an excess flood policy cost to carry? We have several people along the river that did that, and actually it saved them drastically for sure from large financial loss. Or whatnot, and then know the flood risk. Lots of zones have changed. Just recently in November we had some map changes, and then in December we had some others. Some people got moved out of a special flood hazard area, some people got put into it. There's some discounts if you go sign up as quick as you can. If you have a mortgage, you're getting a letter, hey, you need to place flood insurance within 45 days. Get in contact with an agent right away and do that, because there is a discount, being that you're a newly mapped property or whatnot. But did anybody have any other last questions or a couple of things? Yes.
So it's kind of interesting with condominiums, you know, how you have a condo policy, the H06, and then you get one for flood if you're on the ground level for your lender.
Yes.
There are a few condo communities now where their flood policy is doing the insides completely over. So I was a little confused, thinking like, whoa, meanwhile people were paying for flood for their interior, not the contents. And meanwhile now the association is paying for it. So at some point, would somebody turn around and say, I want to see what the master policy covers before you go ahead and get it because your lender's requiring it?
Yeah, I would do that 100%. And then so if the condo association, I'll unpack two things real quickly. If the condo association has a flood policy in place, it's more comprehensive than their building policy. So that is why it will cover the inside build out. It just doesn't cover the contents and a little bit of the floor. But most of it's going to be covered under the association. If it's a flood loss, if they are purchasing the max amount, which is $250,000 per unit on those association policies, the customer doesn't need to purchase anymore, because the max that the National Flood is going to ever pay out is $250,000. So you have a policy here for $250,000 and a lender requires 1 in 100. That's silly. They should just tell them, hey, max they're ever going to pay out is $250,000. They're going to send you a refund for the 100 at the time of the loss. The contents is not covered under those. That's really where those first floor condos was a big surprise for, I have contents coverage, I have an H06 policy. Yeah, a lot of people frustrated because of that. And then looking for the association, now they're going to do the build out, but the contents was, $40,000, $50,000 of contents was destroyed. Yeah, I think you're going to see in those zones, a lot of the home carriers, the H06 carriers, and one of the things Citizens is doing, if it's a condo, they're requiring the contents to match. And this is going on April 1st, match, so they're going to require it if it's being written by Citizens. And you're going to probably see that more with other condo writers. If it's in a flood zone, they're going to receive contents, for sure.
What was that for the new inspection then by the engineers now that they've been flooded out?
New inspection. No, I mean, if everything's, there's not existing damage, they've taken care of it or whatnot, I don't see why they would need one. I mean, that's, yeah.
Like they would request someone if they're moving into a condo to ask for them, the engineering report?
Oh, I would. Oh, yeah. Anything and everything. I mean, if you were buying anything that was substantially damaged, I would see what was done. Absolutely. I would do that full discovery. From my world, the insurance world, is there any existing damage? That's all they're really more concerned with. But some of these, yeah, I mean, it's crazy when you go down Cerro Boulevard and a lot of those condo associations are completely shut down still.
One thing what happened in Sunrise, it's like, are those engineering reports having to be done? Like, are they having to be done now in all the high rises that have been affected? Like, is it mandatory?
Not that I know of yet,
Okay.
but I would say that's going to probably substantially change the association policy world. A little bit different than the unit owner, but yes, because of Surfside and a couple of other things, yes, there's some changes coming, and probably Ian, it just put more pressure on there because from the association policies that are writing like the wind and the catastrophe hazard side of it, Surfside really changed that never happened before. And now you've got the coastal aspect, and those markets are extremely pressured. And so be wary. I mean, a lot of these condo association policies, they have seen drastic rate increases. Some of them have even seen going into a flood zone, and then, and they're having to purchase flood insurance now too, if a majority of their unit owners have mortgages on them and stuff like that. So some of those dues could be really changing, so something to ask, when you're probably showing those properties or whatnot, have we gotten our renewals? Where are the dues going? Have all the losses?
Like, that's what we've been through on doing the due diligence. They're like, well, we don't know what's happening because we're still with the public adjuster.
Yeah.
And, it could be a year or two before we found out, we're actually getting $9 million that we're requesting. And I'm like, okay, then where do you go with that?
Yeah, and So there's a loss assessment coverage if they, like say it's all repaired and everything, and it's only $2,000 that is required to be on a condo policy. So if they ever did a special loss assessment, the new homeowner could be covered under that piece. And then there's some carriers that don't want to cover it because they're like, the loss happened under Ian and under the old seller, whatnot. But yeah, some of those can be pretty hefty, those loss assessments, well over the statutory requirement on these HO6 policies. There might be, if someone buying a condo or whatnot, probably a good advice is that loss assessment coverage. Some condo policies do have a way of increasing that. Some can go to $5,000 and $10,000, and I mean, in the last 5 years, we've seen loss assessments like never before. Special loss assessments is what I'm getting at from associations. I haven't even seen them from homeowners associations because of the damage to their gates and their fencing, and hey, it doesn't meet our deductibles or what have you. So if there's a way to increase that, it's a few dollars typically if they allow it or they have it as additional coverage. Something good probably is to put out there and say, hey, ask if you can increase your loss assessment if you are in a association.
What was that again? Ask if they're going to...
They can increase the loss assessment coverage if they're in an association. So, yeah, I mean, most homeowners policies have $1,000 included. Can be increased. Statutory requirement is all condo policies have a $2,000 limit, and it possibly can be increased depending on the company. But yeah, it can definitely help them if they get a special loss assessment. And I would imagine anybody in a coastal region is definitely going to get a special loss assessment in order to pay for the damages.
So for the HO6, for the condo owner, they get $2,000, like, for what, is their contents coverage, or?
Yeah, it's just an additional coverage on the policy. So they could have a hurricane claim, a wind claim, and then that's actually a separate claim, loss assessment claim. Yeah, so they got billed for, $2,500 or whatever. They would send them out to $2,000.
And the $500 is out of pocket?
There's a $250 deductible on those, but if it's over, the $2,000, then they would just pay the limit. So yeah, it only can be $250 on that. It's not their other deductible that they have. So that's just condos, for sure. But other than that, I'm going to wrap up unless you guys have one last question or whatnot. I know we're getting close on time. Hopefully some of this information was helpful. You've got my information there. If you run into a sticky situation or whatnot, I just like to help people. Just quickly a little bit about the agency. So State Insurance USA, we've roughly got about 25 team members that are ready to help. We've got a dedicated small claims team that can help the communication aspect. And then we've got a new business team that's ready and able to help if somebody's in a sticky situation, getting canceled, non-renewed, anything, or just, hey, can we find coverage on this, and what would it take?
And you do auto, right?
Yes, absolutely. Are you? All right, yeah. Reach out, we'd love to help. Yes, we do that as well. We're full lines. I know I talked mostly on the home and flood and stuff, but yeah, boat, auto, commercial needs as well. Let us know. Happy to help, whatnot. And our core value number one is love in the agency, and so this is our, no, I'm just kidding. We really feel like that if we love and care for our customers well and our referral partners, that's going to build a trusted relationship, and that's going to lead to an excellent experience. And we're always shooting for that. So, not always perfect, sometimes it's sticky, but always shooting for that. Let me know if I can help. You got my email address, you got my phone number there, and my team's always ready to help as well. You take care.
Thank you for coming.